It's a birth story episode, and it's one that fits well in our current times. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a practicing board-certified OBGYN who's had the privilege of helping hundreds of moms bring their babies into this world. I'm here to help you be knowledgeable, prepared, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at ncrcoaching.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 65. Thank you for being here with me today. On today's episode, we have a birth story, and although this particular birth story did not happen in the midst of COVID-19, it could easily describe a birth that is happening now. So I chose this story because I wanted to help you get a sense that although things are different during our current times, so much about birth is still the same. So on today's episode, we have Amy Cole. Amy lives in Maine with her husband and son, and she's a middle school counselor. She loves the outdoors, hiking, swimming, camping, whitewater rafting, and Amy shares her experience of having a vaginal birth in the hospital. Overall, she is very happy with her experience. However, as is the case with birth, some things went great, some things were not as great. So Amy shares her story of how her water broke at 39 weeks during a prenatal appointment after she was checked in the office, like her water broke on the exam table. She talks about how she was able to stick to what she felt was right for her during her labor and birth. And then she also talked about the parts that were not as great, including a not so perfect epidural and having an episiotomy done without consent. So you are going to learn a lot from Amy's story. Now, before we get to Amy's story, don't forget about my free online class on how to make a birth plan. It's recently been updated to reflect changes in giving birth related to COVID-19. Over 1,000 women have registered for this class just in the last month. And I have been blown away by the responses of how helpful women have told me that it is via Facebook comments or direct messages or emails. And I've been really, really grateful for all of that. I am here to serve and I am here to help women have a beautiful birth. So I'm so glad that I'm able to provide this great free resource for you to help you make a birth plan that works for you to help you have that beautiful birth, even in the midst of these crazy times. So definitely check out that free class. It's ncrcoaching.com/register. All right, let's get into today's episode with Amy. So thank you so much, Amy, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I am super excited to have you share your birth story today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited too.
Yeah, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
So I grew up in New Jersey, but I now live in central Maine because I went to college here. I met my husband at the University of Maine in Orono and then just stayed. And then
Okay, see, I have never been like, that sounds cold to me. Is it cold?
It is. Yeah, it
Okay.
is. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cold up here. This winter wasn't too bad. So, but normally, yeah, every winter you kind of think like, why do I live here? And then the summers are really, really nice. So every summer I was always like, oh, I love it here. I'm going to stay. And then I don't know, I just got sucked in every year and then got married.
Yeah. All right. So
and my
go ahead.
husband's from northern Maine. So he's always lived here. And so here we are.
Okay.
And then we just had our first kid last May, Conrad. And we have a dog and a cat. I don't know.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Do you work outside the home at all?
I'm a middle school counselor
God bless you.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a calling, I would say, for people who work with children, especially middle schoolers, I think are the most challenging kind of age group.
I think so.
Yeah. I know at least that was when I was just a little bit of a troublemaker when I was in middle school. So
I always tell my students I didn't really like middle school, but I made it. So will they.
Exactly. All right. So, how about we just hop right in then into your story? Let's talk about before, I like to hear about birth stories, of course, but I think in order to understand the birth, we got to understand a little bit about the pregnancy. So what was your pregnancy like? What was your prenatal care like?
It was a pretty easy pregnancy. So when you work at a school, I don't know, maybe you've heard this before. A lot of us time it to like we try to time it so that we can have our kid and then back it up into summer. So we have this
I
like
have
longer
definitely heard that
maternity leave.
before. Yep.
So my husband and I definitely were trying really hard to like have to conceive at a certain time so that I could have this like longer maternity leave. And somehow we nailed it. It was like perfect.
Nice.
So I found out I was pregnant at the beginning of September in 2018. And yeah, it was pretty easy. I feel like nothing really significant happened.
Okay.
My OBGYN office is like a group. So I saw like a kind of a different doctor every week. I want to say there's like 4 of them and I liked all of them. So they just made sure like every appointment, they made sure I saw a different person more or less, each doctor like 2 or 3 times so that I could like get comfortable with each of them.
Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, I thought that was fine. I guess I didn't really know any different. This, my first baby and all. So I thought that worked out.
Yeah. So you got a chance to meet all of the different doctors in the practice and kind of get a feel for, because they told you up front that it could be any one of them
Right.
who was there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And how did you feel about the care you received?
I mean, I thought it was great. I was very happy with that office. Everyone was always super friendly. I know I've heard people say they don't get a lot of time with their doctor. I guess since probably because my pregnancy was so uneventful, I just didn't feel like any more time. And they never like rushed me out or anything. They always were like, what can I help you with? What kind of questions do you have? And I was always like, I don't know, I'm good. So I thought it went really well.
Good. So did you do anything in particular to like get ready for birth or during your pregnancy, like read books or take classes or any of that stuff? Okay.
I definitely read books and just scoured the internet. And we took one class at the hospital that was like a 1-day, like 6-hour long kind of workshop thing, which was pretty good. And
how did you I guess how'd you like it? How'd you feel about it? And did you have any expectations going into the class maybe?
I guess I didn't really know what to expect. The only so when their description of it advertised that they were going to give you a tour of the birth center, which I realized I could have just done anyway, but I was like, oh, I really want a tour of the birth center. So for me, that seemed like the selling point. But then I was like, well, we should also probably do a birthing class. So my husband and I went, and it was just like, I want to say like 9 or 10 couples around the table. And they showed us a lot of videos of people giving birth and how they dealt with labor. And I appreciated that they showed like kind of one of every type of, like there was someone who had a C-section, someone who chose to not have any drugs of any kind, someone who did have an epidural, someone who used like intravenous drugs of whatever sort.
Okay. Right.
So they showed like a little one of each and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I thought that was good. And the nurse who put on the class told like her personal story, which I really appreciated because I feel like I don't remember all the details, but I feel like she had a unique like birthing experience, and then she had postpartum psychosis, which was really interesting. I never heard of anyone having that. So she told us about that. So I liked that.
Right.
And it didn't
scare you. Did it scare you at all?
Scare me. At the beginning of my pregnancy, I don't know why I was worried about this, but I told my husband, I was really worried about postpartum depression. He was like, do you think you're going to get it? And I was like, I don't know, but people get it. And so I definitely was worried about it, but I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I can understand it's a real, concern. So
Yeah.
I can totally see being worried about it.
And there's another podcast I listened to. My cousin's good friend does it, and she had postpartum depression and talked about it on her podcast. So I was like, oh my God, this is like a thing. It could happen to anybody. And it seemingly comes out of nowhere, sort of. I don't know. That's kind of the information that I thought I got. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, it sounds like you were going to be ready if it did happen.
I was trying.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about something most pregnant women aren't getting enough of, omega-3 DHA. The recommendation is over 200 milligrams a day, but less than 5% of pregnant women in the US meet that. That's one of the reasons I love Ritual's Essential Prenatal. It has 350 milligrams of vegan DHA plus other key nutrients like methylated folate and choline to support baby's neural tube development. As an OBGYN, I appreciate that Ritual goes beyond the basics. The formula is science-backed, third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes, and every ingredient is traceable. And the delayed release design, it's gentle on the stomach, something that really matters, especially if there's trouble with nausea during pregnancy. You deserve to know exactly what you're putting into your body, especially when it comes to prenatal multivitamins. And with Ritual's dedication to traceable science and sourcing, you always will. See for yourself with 25% off your first month at ritual.com/Dr. Nicole. Start Ritual or add Essential Prenatal to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/Dr. Nicole for 25% off your first month. And then what kind of books did you read? And I'm curious what you did, like internet stuff or Facebook groups or any of that kind of stuff.
Oh my God. I did go on Facebook groups. Those were kind of crazy.
Okay, I can hear it in your voice.
I don't know if you've ever seen the Facebook mom groups, but they get pretty wild.
Really?
There's some that are like, I was in a couple, I was literally just trying to get as much information as I possibly could. And so there's some that are kind of labeled as like more supportive, and then some that are like, I don't remember the exact term, but like basically uncensored. And people just seem to get mean on those.
Oh.
Like a lot of mom shaming and stuff like that.
Oh, that's not helpful.
Yeah. So I am no longer in those Facebook.
Okay.
I really liked Emily Oster's books, Expecting Better, right? And then I also bought Crib Sheet, the other one that she had. And I like those because I like how those were kind of just like data with like a little bit of her opinion in there, but kind of like, I'm just giving you the information
very data driven.
Make your own choice. So I liked that.
Okay. Okay. So out of all the things you did, you found like her books were helpful. Was there anything else that you found particularly helpful?
A website, Alpha Mom, that I liked. Whoever runs that website, she posted like a week by week, like what you can be expecting in pregnancy situation, and from like her own experience, but it was really relatable, and I like how she wrote it. So every time I'd like check it every week and be like, yes, oh my gosh, me too. So I liked that website. I think that was about it. Someone gave me one of those like classic what to expect when you're expecting books, but I kind of just browsed it. And then I also, someone gave me like one of those girlfriends guides to pregnancy, which I read like some of it, and I did like some of that one. But my favorite was the Emily Oster's books.
Okay. Okay. I have to confess, I have not read those, and they're on like my to-do list to read because I've heard some people say that they do like them.
Yeah. Yeah. She basically just presents a lot of data, which I think is more helpful than someone just being like, this is what I think.
Right. Right. Yeah. Kind of letting people draw their own conclusions. Yeah. Now, was there anything in particular that you felt like you wanted for your birth? Like, were you looking for information to support a specific experience, or you just were kind of getting all the stuff you wanted, all the information you could, I guess?
Yeah. I was pretty open. Like when we got we got like a piece of paper, like a form from the hospital that was like a birth plan where you basically could just like select choices. And I mean, they said you could bring any sort of birth plan you wanted, or you could just use their form, or you could have nothing, whatever you wanted. And so I pretty much walked in there just being like, hey, the only thing I really care about is that we get the baby out safely. And I wanted an epidural.
Okay. So you knew from the beginning that you wanted an epidural.
Yeah. I did have a moment where I was like, oh, I want to just do this all natural. And my husband was kind of like, but why? And so we talked about it and I was like, yeah, I guess I think it's really amazing how, like when women give birth without any sort of intervention like that. But eventually we kind of came to the conclusion. I was like, I don't really feel super passionate about it. It just like sounded cool. And then I was like, I'm kind of a baby. I am afraid of how much pain this will be. And so, and I wasn't opposed to an epidural. So we discussed it and settled on like, yeah, let's get an epidural.
Gotcha. Yeah. And which is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Did you feel like you had any pushback from any friends or family or anything about that decision, or it was easy to get to?
I don't know. I feel like maybe I put off this vibe, well, at least with my friends and family, that like don't question me because nobody does usually ever. So no.
Well, good, good. I'm glad you were, because it's I swear people get pushback sometime either way, whatever
Yeah,
choices they make. So,
that's
so that's
true.
great. Yeah, yeah. What about stuff like delayed cord clamping or skin to skin
Oh yeah.
contact?
All of that was like standard at our birth center. So which was stuff that I wanted, but I was, not super worried about it because it all was like their common practice. So that was
Gotcha. And
exciting.
was this a freestanding birth center or a
No,
birth center within a
it was
hospital?
affiliated with it was in a hospital, yeah.
Okay. Did they have a separate L&D or did they just call their labor and delivery a birth center?
Um, I guess they just called it a birth center.
Okay, no, it's totally fine. I'm just curious what different models are. Like there's some hospitals that have like what's called like a separate birth center for like low intervention, low risk
Oh, okay.
people,
Yeah.
and then like the regular L&D has other stuff. So it
Oh,
just
yeah. Okay. No, that was their only
okay.
L&D like area. They had,
Place.
I think I want to say like 10 rooms, and they had within that area there were rooms for C-sections and then lower intervention rooms like on the same wing. And it was in the hospital, but kind of like you can get to it through the hospital, but it was kind of separate. It's a really small hospital.
Gotcha. But they tried to make it feel like not quite so hospitally, it
Yeah,
sounds.
I think they did a good job.
Okay. Oh,
Felt
good.
like I was
Good.
at like a hotel.
Oh, nice. Okay. I think that's how birth should, because it's like, it's not a disease, it's a
Right.
normal medical thing. So, well, why don't we talk about what your labor and birth was like?
Yeah. So this is what I think was, I don't know, I just hadn't heard this happen before. But basically, when I was 39 weeks pregnant, I went in for my 39-week checkup. And at 38 weeks, they offered to do a cervical check, and they did. And I think, I don't know, I was like 1 centimeter dilated, maybe, something kind of insignificant. And after that, at 38 weeks, I think my mucus plug started to come out like over the next week. And so I was like, oh, what did she do up there? And then the following week at 39 weeks, I got another cervical check. And I think she said I was like 70% effaced already, but still only like maybe 1 or 1.5 centimeters dilated. And so it was my doctor, and she had an intern with her, and they left the room and were like, okay, you could get your clothes back on and we'll see you next week if not sooner. And I was like, okay, great. And so when I got up off of her table, my water broke. Except for I
Oh,
think she
okay.
broke my water when she gave me a cervical check. So I stood up and it just like leaked out.
Oh,
And I was alone in the room at that point, and I was like, oh,
right.
what do I do?
Hello? Like,
So I like just stood there for a sec because it was like kind of a steady trickle. And I looked around, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like just try to put my clothes back on so I could hobble out into the hallway and ask for somebody. And luckily the like receptionist had a window right diagonal from the room. So I stuck my head out. I was like, can I get like the like a nurse or the doctor back in here just real quick? And I think I might have even said like, I think my water broke, and they were like, oh yeah, of course. So the doctor and her intern like rushed back in, and she was like, I don't think I've done that before. So it's like, it seems like she probably like broke my water on accident and
Gotcha.
tested
Was
like,
it particularly aggressive with, or was it like a painful check,
I
or
mean,
did it?
I thought it was kind of painful, but I thought they were supposed to be because it was the week before too. Like, it feels like, right? I don't know. Yeah, and she like tested the like fluid to make sure and was like, yep, I broke your water. You're
Okay.
staying. And I had like come straight from work. Like my car was in the parking lot. I had like my lunch box from work in my car, which I just thought funny because it ended up staying there for 5 days.
Oh.
And so I texted my husband like in the room while I was waiting for the doctor to come. She had like left the room for a second. I was like, hey, so like my water broke and I have to stay here. And it was probably like 3:30 in the afternoon, and he works like an hour away from the hospital. And so he just dropped everything, had to drive down. We had our dog was at doggy daycare. He had to pick up the dog. He had to pick up my bag at home and like run all these errands. But there wasn't really a hurry because I wasn't really in labor yet. And so my OB's office was also attached to the hospital. So they just had me walk just right up to the birth center and check in, which is another reason why it felt like a hotel, because when I first got there, I wasn't in labor. I just like got comfy, put on the TV. So yeah, that was how it started.
Okay. Did they give you the option at all of going home and coming back?
No, she didn't. I mean, she didn't suggest that, and I think I just got like immediately nervous, like, oh my God, this is happening. So I was like, just tell me what to do.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I didn't
Okay.
even
Okay.
think like I probably had a little time. I just was like, okay, yep, I'm going right up.
Right, right, right. Okay. I can imagine that felt like what's going on? Like you probably run your head through the various, run the scenarios through your head of what's going to happen, how it's going to start, and like none of it involved that.
Yeah, no, I for sure. I mean, I guess I imagined traditionally, like I would start having contractions I actually kind of just thought I would have them at work. That was like my fear, and I would have to go up to like one of my bosses and be like, "Hey, I'm in labor, gotta go." So, I mean, that wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but I just was like, oh, I just really just don't want to be at work when I go into labor. I want to be at home. And well, it was neither.
So you get to the hospital or you get to the birth
Yeah.
center and get settled in. So then what happens from there?
So then they were talking about inducing me because I get, what is it? Like, I don't know. They didn't want a certain amount I think they were giving me 12 hours before my like cutoff. Well, then they were going to make me like get induced. But they were like, do you want us to induce you because you're not really in labor and your water broke, so you'll have to be induced if you don't go into labor. And I was like, well, can we just wait? Like, I don't know, let's see what happens. And I have no idea why I felt so confident that I didn't need to be induced, but I remember just thinking like, no, I'm good. Like I'll go into labor. It's fine.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, that's not a bad bet. I mean, about half of women will, and within 6 hours after their water breaks. But then after that, we don't have a whole lot of data. So it wasn't, your instinct wasn't off.
I mean, I didn't even know that. But yeah, so my husband finally gets there. He's kind of like trying to listen to the doctor, and he's like, well, maybe you should get induced. And I was like, no, let's wait. And they were like, all right, that's cool, you can wait, but if you're not like having any contractions by like 4 a.m, we're gonna have to induce you. And I was like, okay, that sounds fair, that's fine. So they kept checking on me. They were, checking the baby, everything was fine. And then and I got in there at like 3:30. I did start to get contractions at night, but it was like probably like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And they were like pretty light. So the nurse would check on me and I was like, yeah, no, I feel something. They're like, okay, but you're talking, you're good. Like it must be pretty small. And I was like, yeah, it's not that bad. And they were like, you should probably try to get some sleep because you're probably having a baby tomorrow. And I was like, yep. And then I don't even remember if I fell asleep, but the contractions progressively got much more aggressive to the point where I was like, I'm not sleeping. This hurts. And my husband was trying to sleep on like the little cot thing. And I'm just sitting there like in pain. But despite the video where they show you like, get up, walk around, bounce on a ball, I just wanted to like lay there and like, I don't know, just wait for it to pass every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. And eventually the nurse came in and was like, like it seems a lot worse now. Like you seem like you're in pain. I was like, yep. When can I get an epidural? And so at around sometime in the middle of the night, I don't know, it was probably like 3 a.m, I think, the doctor who was on call then, who was one of the male doctors, which is, I had no problem with that, except for I swear he has bigger hands because when he went to check me, I was like, oh my, it hurt way more than either of the other doctors that had done it. But apparently I was all of a sudden 7 centimeters dilated.
Okie dokie then.
Yeah.
So indeed you have been laboring.
Yeah. The doctor was like, wow. Like he just seemed like amazed that I like went into labor on my own quickly and then kind of accelerated to 7 centimeters dilated. And he was like, well, you're going to have a baby soon. I was like, yeah, so that epidural.
Right. Like, can you do that? Or please find the person who can.
So luckily they called in the anesthesiologist. There was another woman in labor right like in the room next to mine, I guess, and they were hitting her first. And I was like, okay. So they're like, yeah, we have to give you that. Like they have to give you, what is it, saline first? So they're like, well, you have to do this first. And I was like, okay. But yeah, eventually I got the epidural. That was amazing. It worked perfectly. And I got to fall asleep for a couple hours before they woke me up and were like, yeah, you're 10 centimeters dilated. Hooray. So yeah, that all like went
relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And then was it just your husband that was with you?
Yep. Yeah. And several nurses that were like coming and going. All really awesome nurses.
Yeah. Did you consider a doula at all during your pregnancy?
I mean, I had heard of a doula, but I didn't really know much about it until after. So like for next time, I kind of am definitely thinking about it. But I didn't really know what they did.
Gotcha. And then do you feel like you said the nurses were there and everybody treated you well and respectfully and all that stuff?
Yeah, I thought the nurses were awesome. Like they were so helpful. Like if I needed anything or if I didn't know what was going on, like they were really, I mean, there was only, I think it was just me and that other woman in the birth center while we were there. So they, they weren't super busy. That was probably helpful. So they felt really attentive.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's, I mean, really they should be attentive no matter how many patients there are, but it certainly helps when it's not as busy. So,
yeah.
So that's great. And you never felt like did you ever feel coerced or like, I don't know, pressure to do anything that you didn't want to do?
Not really. Like they did seem like they kind of were trying to lean me towards getting induced during the night, but they were very respectful when I was like, nope, I'm still good. But the doctor kept mentioning it and being like, okay, but yeah. So, I mean, and it wasn't really even him as much as the fact that he kept mentioning it made my husband be like, are you sure we should listen to the doctor? And I was like, no, we're good.
Gotcha.
But I thought they were really respectful. So.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So no complaints, it sounds like, about your care.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So then you got completely dilated and then it was time to push?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I fell asleep for a while. So then I think I started pushing at like 11 a.m. the next day. And I don't know, I pushed for 2.5 hours or so.
Okay. Which actually for a first baby with the epidural is not bad.
Okay, I have no idea. I was like, this feels really long. And even though I had the epidural, which I think was working well. There was like this weird spot on my hip that would, every time I had a contraction, I felt like extreme pain in that spot. And my doctor was like, well, that's good. You know, you're having a contraction. I was like, yeah, but it sucks.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
don't
We
think
call that a hot spot.
okay, is
Like
that
where
like
some, yeah,
normal?
where sometimes you just have a spot where there's just not great coverage.
Okay. Yeah. So I did feel things, but it wasn't, I mean, I know they always say you kind of like forget how bad it was. So now I'm saying it wasn't that bad, but I feel like it was pretty bad.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then pushing, you felt like the nurse was with you and helping you
Yeah,
and
she had one of my legs the whole time and my husband had the other. Oh, I did get really, actually, the night before I got the epidural and after when I was pushing, I got really nauseous a couple times and I threw up a couple times. I don't know if that's like a normal thing that happens, but
super common.
okay.
Yes.
And at one point, the nurse was like, "Oh, sometimes it helps to like rub a like an alcohol swab under your nose, and that will take away the nausea," which did the opposite for me. I like puked
Okay.
as soon as she did that.
Oh.
I was like, "Nope, didn't help." Thanks.
Thanks for trying.
So yeah, it was kind of rough, but in between contractions, I felt fine, which I'm sure is pretty standard. And there was like a solid 5 minutes in between every one of my contractions. So in between, I just felt like we were just all sitting around. So at one point, I was like, "Can we put the TV on?"
Right,
So we
right.
watched like a Friends marathon the whole time I was in labor. And it was the episodes where Rachel is pregnant. So I was like, "Oh, here we are."
That is hilarious.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I pushed for like 2.5 hours, which to me felt like forever. And I give my doctor a lot of credit. So the woman who ended up delivering my baby was the same woman who broke my water. She like, came back for her next shift, and I really liked her. But she didn't like, I feel like she never gave me any false hope. Like she wasn't like, "You're almost there." And I wanted her to say that, but I think she was like, "You're not almost there. I'm not going to tell you that." So I appreciated that in the end, but I was like, "Can she just like tell me how far it is? Like when's this thing gonna come out?" And at one point she asked if I wanted to try the vacuum. I was like, "Yes. Yeah, let's do it." Anything.
Okay.
So she tried that, and I mean, obviously I couldn't really see, but my husband said she was like pulling on it so hard that her arm was shaking. And at one point the vacuum flew off his head and she went backward. And I was like, did he come out? That was not the case.
That is called, this is so interesting to me hearing you describe the the experience from the other side. That is called a pop off, when the
Uh,
vacuum literally pops off the baby's head.
I was
Yeah.
like, maybe he came out. She was like, no, no.
Right.
She just like went flying. I was like, oh, okay. So then I don't know if she just felt like it wasn't working, but she was like, "I'm going to put the vacuum down. You got this." And I was like, okay. And she also gave me an episiotomy. I think she cut me twice. So this was the part I was really unclear about. After the fact, like I listened to a lot of like birth story podcasts and such, and I like have now heard that episiotomies aren't really done very routinely anymore. So I was like, wow, she just
Mm-mm.
like went for it and like didn't even ask me. So I didn't know if that was normal, but
It's not normal. Well, I take that back. It's unfortunately for some people, it is normal not to ask, but it should not be. Um, and episiotomy is not that routine at all anymore, because it's mostly unnecessary.
yeah. So I just like now I just keep thinking like what would have happened if she didn't do that? Like would it have been easier to recover? Because oh my gosh, was so painful after. And I had a friend who actually gave birth the day before me and she just tore. And I remember like seeing her post a picture online one day of her wearing jeans. And I was like, how did you put jeans on? Like I could barely like handle wearing like big giant shorts, just nothing touching that area.
Right. It was just too much.
So I was like, oh, that must have been why, because I had an episiotomy and she just got to tear naturally. I assume that's like why her recovery wasn't quite as bad.
So I guess, so she put the vacuum on and then she said, okay, well, never mind. How much longer did you push before Conrad was here?
I feel like that was like in the middle. So I want to say like maybe another hour.
Really?
I think so. It's a little bit of a blur, but I know
Okay.
it was a
Okay.
while. It wasn't like a couple more pushes or anything. Like it was definitely a while.
Okay. And then when do you feel like she cut the episiotomy? Like right as he was being born?
No, she did it twice. And I think once was after the vacuum, and then once might have been a little closer to him being born. Like I don't, they were a little spaced out and I don't remember exactly when, but it was definitely kind of like in the second half of pushing.
And you remember like seeing her with the scissors
Yeah,
or
she like announced it, but she didn't ask me. So I knew she was doing it. And I guess I didn't think, I was like in the middle of giving giving birth. I didn't think to be like, no, 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 please don't do that. I just kind of, I mean, at that point, I was kind of like, get the baby out, do whatever.
right, 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 right. So she was just like, I'm going to do an episiotomy.
Yeah.
Okay, my mouth is kind of hanging open. I mean, just because this is just not typically how, I mean, obviously, I don't see a lot of other doctors and how they deliver, but usually it's like right at the end when baby is crowning and maybe you need a little extra room for baby to come quicker.
Yeah, I think the second one was at the end.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, but she had definitely sent me twice, and once was a little earlier.
Okay. Well, that is not typical. I will say that. Yeah,
I know
that is not
that
typical.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say that it should not have been like, I'm going to do an episiotomy. It should have been a discussion, especially if it's not an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, it wasn't an emergency.
Right. Well, I can tell you it's not if you were allowed to, if you, I shouldn't say allowed, or if they, like, if you pushed for another, any length of 30-minute, period of
Yeah,
time, then it wasn't an emergency.
yeah. And like they kept, every so often they would, I don't know if you could hear these messages I'm getting. Every so often they would check, like check the baby's heartbeat and stuff, and he was always fine. So I don't know. Yeah. And I mean, I remember talking to my husband after and being like, I've actually heard and read that it's not common to get an episiotomy. I don't know like why she did that. And I mean, he doesn't know either, but he kind of like made me feel better because he was like, well, would you rather have them done that or had a C-section? I was like, well, I guess I'd rather have an episiotomy, but was that really like what it was between?
Necessary.
Like,
Right, right, exactly. Okay. So then I guess let's talk about the moment when he was born and then how you feel about the experience now. So what was it like when he finally came out?
well, it was amazing. So yeah, he came out and they put him right on top of me, and like I started bawling basically. Uh,
Aw.
and I don't know, it was just really exciting, and I like felt amazing, and that whole like flood of like, oh, I'm done, and here's my baby. So that was really exciting. Um, yeah, that all just feels like such a like rush. Like not that they rushed me, but just like a rush of excitement. That's what I meant. So yeah, he was adorable. He was like perfect when he was born. My husband got to hold him. They asked my husband a couple times if he wanted to cut the cord, and he said no every time. And they were like, "Are you sure? You sure you don't want to?" And he was like, "I really don't."
Right.
And then he got to hold him, and so Conrad took his first poop on my husband when he was holding him, which was very sticky. And my husband had to throw his shirt away. Really funny. And it was like perfectly timed because I had like basically just given him the baby, and I was like, oh, thank God. Like I'm messy enough.
That is funny. That is funny. Well, like first poop on dad. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So then how was your recovery in the hospital?
Oh yeah. So after he was born, we were like holding him. They like wheeled in the thing to weigh and measure him and all that stuff. So he didn't leave the room. And while this is all going on, the doctor's still like down there, like trying to have my placenta come out. She like had me push a couple times, but I was like so distracted. Like this was very minor. And she sewed me up, which I couldn't feel because I still had the epidural. So all of whatever was going on down there, I like was pretty not like distracted. Like I wasn't paying
Yeah, you
attention.
were on the euphoria of my baby's here.
Couldn't feel it, which I was happy about because I was like, oh, she's really stitching something up. And yeah, I was just so excited to have the baby finally. So that all seemed fine. And I mean, overall, I didn't think anything was like out of the ordinary. I mean, and maybe it wasn't. But like, it hurt down there once the epidural wore off. And I remember the nurse like coming in and being like, okay, you have to go pee. And I was like, wait, what? Like, so she like escorted me in to pee, like, and showed me how to use the peri bottle and everything. And then I basically just got to like lay in bed for several days. They kept me there well, I mean, I went in on Thursday, but I had the baby on Friday and they kept me there till Sunday, which coincidentally was Mother's Day. So that was
Aw.
and yeah, I don't know. That seemed really nice. Like they were really helpful with the baby. They were really helpful with helping me breastfeed. And they would like at night they'd offer to take the baby to the nursery for a few hours if I wanted to sleep. And I was like, yeah, you could do that. That sounds great. So overall, like that whole experience was awesome, I thought.
Okay, good, good. And you felt like breastfeeding was going okay?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard at first. I mean, it seemed okay. They were having me pump, I guess, like to get some milk flowing, I'm assuming. Like, I don't know. I don't know what was the baby was getting when he was trying to latch to me. I think he kept falling asleep. And so they had me pump and I was getting like small amounts of colostrum and they were syringe feeding him that after. So I was like, they were having me try to feed him for, I forget how long, and then pump right after that every 3 hours, which is pretty exhausting throughout the night.
That is exhausting.
And I really appreciated that they never once were like, you should give him some formula to like supplement or like, you're not really making anything. You should give him formula. They never suggested that. So I never even thought like, I don't know. I guess they didn't make me feel worried that he wasn't getting anything. They're like, he's fine. He's like, this is plenty. His stomach is the size of a marble. Like he's great. So I really liked that. They're very pro breastfeeding.
Okay, okay, good, 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 good. And then physically, you said you were just in a lot of discomfort. How long did that last?
At least, well, I felt like it really hurt for like a week. And then the second week, it wasn't quite as bad, but still kind of hurt. And then I think after like about 2 weeks, it was pretty okay. But for the first like week after, I was like limping around my house, like ice packs around the clock. Like I was like, man, how do people, this is painful.
Right.
I done
Wow.
all the things like the dermaplast, which I didn't really like because I felt like it was like weird, had like a weird film. I don't know. And like
Gotcha.
what else
Witch
did they give?
hazel.
Witch hazel pads. Yeah, I was like rotating all these things on and I just found it to be incredibly painful. But I thought like, oh, this must be this must be normal.
Right, right. Were you taking pain medicine?
Yeah, they gave me just like 800 milligram ibuprofen, but I definitely took that for like 2 weeks straight.
Okay. 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 And then do you recall her saying what type of tear you had or anything like that? Like a number to it?
No. And I did ask her one point, like, how many stitches did I get? And she said, well, I wouldn't really worry about how many. It was more like a seam. And I was like, what does that mean? So I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like we use one long stitch and kind of put it all together. So it's
Oh,
not like
okay.
individual stitches. Yeah. So clearly that analogy doesn't translate
I
well.
thought
But
in my mind, she was saying there's so many stitches, you might as well not worry about it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
gotcha. 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 Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I was, okay.
And then when did you have your postpartum visit?
At 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like that was too long?
Yeah, I kind of do. Because I mean, at that point, like I felt pretty okay. But like before that, and I don't know, I'm not one to really complain. I always think like this must be what it's like. Like I've never had a baby before, but I feel like early before that would have probably been better because I would have liked to be like, is this healing okay? Like, does this look right? But I just was like, well, it's getting better every day, so it must be fine. Was kind of what I figured, but I wouldn't have hated if they recommended a sooner appointment.
Gotcha. Like within, I mean, and we're getting better. We're trying to say we should touch bases with women, whether on the phone or in person, within the first 3 weeks after birth, especially for first time moms.
I did. I mean, I guess this isn't the same, but the lactation consultants called me a bunch of times and like texted me, which I kind of thought was awesome to check on how that was going. But yeah, I don't think anyone checked on me personally.
Yeah, yeah. And then how do you feel like, did you have any trouble with postpartum depression?
No, I actually, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. I think because I brought it to his attention, my husband was like really like on top of it. He'd always be like, "How are you feeling? How's everything going? Are you happy? Do you feel like I'm helping enough?" And I was like, "I'm fine. Like, calm down."
Like, we're good, we're good, we're good.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I appreciated it, but at the same time, I was like, "You're being a little overkill." But no, he
Gotcha.
was good.
Gotcha.
And they like at the pediatrician's office, they make you fill out a form every single time you go in. Just, I mean, I think that's great. And I've never had a problem. So I'm like, I wonder like what the process is if I did answer a question that like flagged them. I'm just curious. So I don't really know what would happen,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So we end up referring to either a counselor or a psychiatrist
that
or,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Ideally, we should have resources connected. Some communities have better resources than others, but there should definitely be like what to do next if somebody does need help.
Yeah. There is like a support group at my hospital. Like I've seen signs for it, but I don't really know much else about it other than that.
Gotcha. And then at your postpartum checkup, did you see the doctor who did the delivery or somebody else?
I did see my doctor who did the delivery. And I mean, again, like I really like, she's like a nice person and like, I liked her, but that was interesting how she just said, "How's everything going? Do you want me to check out like what it looks like down there?" And I was like, I mean, I guess not. It seems fine. And so she never checked anything,
Okay. That's
which is
interesting
also
because
sort of my fault. But I guess I kind of just was
it's not
like,
your fault. Like, you don't, I think we forget, like, we do this hundreds of times. For you, it is like your first time.
right.
And, we should be able to provide women guidance. So this is definitely really eye opening. I think in some ways we think like we're doing, maybe we need to ask a different question or ask it a different way, or just say, hey, like, let me just take a peek and make sure everything looks okay. It doesn't have to be like, you can just look from the outside. Usually you don't have to look all on the inside, but okay. So you were kind of felt like, well, if she's saying that I don't have to do it, then I don't. Okay.
Yeah. I guess she was like, does everything like feel okay? Like, does everything feel fine? I was like, well, yeah, it does. So she was like, okay, well, I don't have to look down there. I was like, oh, okay. Which seemed kind of weird, but I guess I just got like nervous and was like, she's saying it's probably fine.
Right, right, right. And then what were your thoughts during that 6 weeks or when you saw her about the episiotomy?
um, I think at that point I still didn't realize that it was like so uncommon. Like I think it took me a while to be like for it to like really sink in that like that didn't need to happen. Like I think it took me a while, a couple of months.
Okay, okay. Did you have any, I don't know what the right word is, not guilt, but just like being angry even, or like frustrated or just confused, or how did that make
Um,
you feel?
yeah, I mean, I wasn't really that angry about it. Like, I guess I kind of just, and I mean, I know that, I know now that probably it's not how it should have gone, but I was like, well, I know better for next time and like, that's fine. 'Cause I think my husband and I would like another kid. And I was like, you know what, next time I'm going to make sure that that I talk about that in my birth plan or whatever I have to do to make sure like that doesn't happen again. And I don't know. I think I just am the type of person that doesn't really dwell on things that I can't change. So I just want to think about what I can do next time. is kind of my thought.
Gotcha. But it does seem like, and I'm not trying to stir up any
I don't
controversy or anything. I'm
know.
just trying to get an honest assessment of
Yeah.
how you feel. But it does seem like it bothered you.
Yeah, it definitely did bother me. I feel like it wasn't to the point where I was gonna like say anything or
Mm-hmm.
complain to the hospital or anything like that, I guess.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. And while I'm thinking about it, was she an older physician by chance, or?
I mean, I don't think she was that old. If I were to guess, she was probably, I mean, I guess she's probably like in her 50s. So not like especially old,
Right.
but
Right. Right. Yeah. It tends to be physicians that are older who do episiotomies, at least in my experience, more routinely because that's how they were trained. And sometimes it's harder for them to let go of that. So that doesn't entirely surprise me.
yeah. And I think, I mean, out of the four doctors at that office, the three of them were like kind of older. And one of them was pretty young seeming. Like I bet she was around my like 30. But I didn't see her while I was giving. I think she checked on me once when I was in labor. So that was
Okay.
about it.
Okay. Okay. And so overall, how do you feel about your experience?
I mean, I like if I think back overall, I have a really positive view of how it went. 'Cause, like overall, I was very happy. I got to have a vaginal birth. I was happy that I got an epidural and that I didn't have any like negative effects from that. I was happy my baby came out like perfectly healthy. And also that he was born like precisely on time for me to get my like exact amount of maternity leave.
Right, right.
So yeah, I mean, and I really liked the hospital. I thought all the nurses were amazing. Everyone was just super nice and respectful. So overall, I have a really positive view of it. And like I'm certainly planning on having my next kid there if that works out.
Gotcha. But it sounds like you still have you would do things a little
Yeah.
bit different the next time.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to kind of know what to expect next time. Except I'm still like, wow, what if next time I have a kid, I go into labor on my own, like at my house, which is what I thought was going to happen. But I'm like, this time I might not really know what that means.
It'll be the same like how your contractions started ramping up in the hospital, except you'd be at home.
Yeah, I just think it's like I feel like they talk about this a lot, like in the birthing class and stuff, like when you should decide to go to the hospital. And I was like, I didn't have to think about that. I was already there.
Right,
So this time I'll
right,
be like,
right. That's
should we go
true.
now? Is now
Right,
the time?
right.
It's like one of my really good friends had a baby like 5 months earlier, and it was her third baby, but for some reason she kept showing up at the hospital. They kept sending her home. They were like, well, you're not really far along enough yet. And so I think that happened. They sent her home like 2 or 3 times. And then the last time she had gone home, she, I guess, I don't know how the details, but they tried to get back to the hospital and she ended up having her baby in the car on the side of the highway.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was like, I mean, so she had told me that story like not too long ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, well, that was your third kid. That probably won't happen to me, but like, why did they send you away? Like,
Yeah.
so that kind of freaked
For
me out a little bit.
I can understand. For first babies, I have not seen that happen, but for a third kid, things can go like quick, and obviously they did for her.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
she was like, oh, it was like a 15-minute drive to the hospital. We did not make it.
Right, right, right. Sometimes when babies, I don't want to like scare anybody, but sometimes when babies come like fast and furious like that, it doesn't matter. You could be wherever. The baby's just going to come.
Yeah.
And so there's not a whole lot to interrupt that process, obviously. Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I mean, she has unmedicated birth, like all of her births were unmedicated. So I knew like that wasn't really a thing for her, but I was like, if that happened to me and I couldn't get an epidural, oh my God. I was like, I guess I'd survive. It sounds like it was really quick, but that like freaked me out too.
Right, 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 right. Well, you did great getting to 7 centimeters without an epidural.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know. And it seemed like, I mean, this didn't really bother me, but it seemed like none of the nurses believed how much pain I was in. Like they were like, you seem fine. And I was like, I guess. how much more worse does it, like, bad does it get? Like, can anyone explain this to me? So I just kept thinking like it must get much worse. And then they were like, wow, you're like way further along than we thought. I was like, oh, okay.
Everyone expresses pain differently. And it sounds like you don't express it very like, you weren't like
No.
screaming or
I was like
you're more
clenching,
uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
quietly.
Right. And so they didn't see some of those cues or signs that maybe things were progressing
Yeah.
faster than they realized, obviously.
Yeah. So I was like pretty proud of myself when they told me I was at 7 centimeters. I was like, I made it pretty far. I'm ready. I'm ready
You
for the
did.
epidural.
Yes. I will put in a tiny plug. Next time, if you want to go the distance, I'm sure you could.
Oh my gosh. I know. It's part of it, like, again, I don't have anything against epidurals, but part of me feels like it'd be really badass to like do it without it.
Right.
We'll
Well,
see.
if you got to 7, the rest of it is usually not that long. So I'll put that plug in your ear. How about that?
Man, that is something to think about.
Alrighty. So overall, happy with your
Yeah.
experience. But then if you had to pick something that you weren't happy about, it would be the episiotomy part.
Yeah, for sure. Which I'm glad I like know now.
And so let's just to wrap up, what is your favorite piece of advice that you would give to other women as they get ready for their birth?
I mean, I know not everybody can be like really just open to anything, but that would be my advice. Just like don't try to overplan because, and I'm sure this is like, I've heard other people give this advice 100 times, but it really truly is like the best advice I think is that you can't plan your birth like to the minute at all. So just accept that and be open to like things changing in your plan.
Absolutely. Birth is an unpredictable
Right.
process.
But I didn't even
Babies are
really
the
have a plan, which I don't know. If you could be that type of person, I'm not a super planner per se. So if you can just not have a plan, I felt like that was kind of nice because I just like everything seemed like it was going the way it should.
Gotcha. So maybe not have a rigid plan, but maybe have an idea of what to expect, you think?
Oh yeah.
Or
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it would be nice to know like what common practices are so that I could be like, please don't cut me open.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I
Yeah,
really,
thanks
really
for
appreciate
letting
it.
me.
Yeah. Are you online anywhere or
I
anything?
have Instagram. It's AJ Cole 230, I think.
Okay. All right.
And
We'll
I don't
link
know.
to
I'm
that.
also private on Instagram, but that's only because I'm a teacher and I don't want any of my students following me.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's not
guys,
like
don't.
I'm not a
Yeah,
post.
my family is teachers. I understand. You can't be when teachers have to hide online.
Oh
That's
yeah, it's
just the
AJ
reality.
Cole 230. So I mean, as long as you're not one of my students, I will happily accept a friend request.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. And we'll have to hear what happens when you get pregnant again and how the birth goes the next time around.
I'm nervous, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I feel like after, when the memory starts to fade and the next thing you know, you're like, well, it's not that bad. And now they're sleeping through the night. And then,
Yeah,
and then next thing you know, baby number 2.
yeah, and our son starts just sleeping through the night like perfectly at 3 months, and he still does. So I feel like we're a little spoiled there.
Like sleeping all the way through the night?
Yeah, he sleeps from like 8 to 7 a.m.
Oh my God.
and has ever since 3 months.
Nice. That is very nice.
I
Yes.
do not know what happened. It was like a fluke.
Right. The door is open for the next time around for
I feel
sure.
like it could even be more like eventful, but hopefully not too eventful.
Yeah. All right. Well, you take care, Amy. All right. So wasn't that a great episode? I love Amy's attitude about how she has really just a positive and upbeat and looking forward kind of attitude about things. I think that's a really great perspective on how to approach life. Now, you know that after every episode, I do something called Nicole's Notes, where I talk about my top 3 or 4 takeaways from the episode and the conversation. So here are Nicole's notes on my episode with Amy. All right, number 1. I love that Amy stuck to what she felt was right for her during her labor and birth. She knew that she wanted an epidural and she went with an epidural. And then the harder part is that she stuck with her instinct of holding off on being induced. Now, I'm not saying that not being induced is better than being induced. What I'm saying is that it's good to take in all the information. And in Amy's case, she took in all the information about how her water was broken, but she wasn't quite in labor yet. She could wait, she could not wait. And then she checked in with her instincts and what her inner voice was telling her. And she went with what felt best for her when she took all of that information in. Now, sometimes that can be hard. Like Amy mentioned, her husband said, don't you want to just listen to the doctor? And, he probably wasn't doing that to be like difficult or anything. I get why people want to do that or have that sentiment. You don't want to seem like a troublemaker. You think this is the doctor, this is what they're saying, but it's important that you take your intuition into account. We have it for a reason. And this can be hard when the person you're dealing with is nice. Amy also talked about repeatedly how the doctor was a nice person, but I think it's always great if you're having some hesitation or some concern about something to just step back for a second and check in with yourself and see how you feel. Now, you need to do that in the context of getting a broader sense of the information in general. And that's where that BRAIN acronym comes in handy. If you haven't heard it before, let me tell you what that is. So BRAIN is whenever someone is presenting an option to you for what to do during your pregnancy and birth, the BRAIN acronym is B, ask for what are the benefits? R is what are the risks? A, what are the alternatives? I is what is your instinct telling you? What is, your intuition telling you? And then N is what happens if we do nothing. So check in with those things, check in with your intuition. I think it's an important thing to do and to utilize. We have that voice for a reason. All right. Number 2, episiotomy. Amy's story about episiotomy. Episiotomy should never, ever, ever be done without consent. Now, obviously, Amy has made peace with what happened to her with the episiotomy, and she knows how to approach it next time. But let me tell you, these stories of episiotomies being cut without consent really infuriate me every single time I hear them. It's such a prime example of how we devalue women's rights to make choices about what happens to their own bodies. And it's something that's so invasive. I mean, it's literally cutting a woman's body. And the truth is, it really does not take that long to explain why an episiotomy might be necessary. The few times that I've done an episiotomy, and I haven't done one, in probably, I know over a year, it doesn't take that long to explain. Usually it's when the heart rate is low and baby needs to be born quickly. And it, may go something like, hey, Sarah, your baby's heart rate is dangerously low. We need your baby to go ahead and be born. So I'd like to cut a small episiotomy in order to make more space for your baby to be born quicker. When I explain that, everybody's like, okay, I get it. Baby's heart rate is low. Baby needs to come out. Let's do it. Let's get it done. So it doesn't take that long to explain. And if someone doesn't explain why an episiotomy is being done, then it's probably because they know that there's not a medical reason why it should be done, that they're just trying to speed up the process of birth. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is don't stay in environments that are unsupportive. So in Amy's case, she talked about how some of the Facebook groups she was in were unsupportive, how some of the Facebook groups were like mom shaming and things like that. Do not stay in environments like that. Another example of staying in an environment that's unsupportive is sticking with a provider who you know does not fit your philosophy for birth or isn't really attentive to your needs. Please don't stay in that sort of unsupportive environment. Change if you need to. So if you need a new provider, find a new provider. There are other Facebook groups out there. I will talk about my own Facebook group all about pregnancy and birth. It's a great no judgment, no shaming zone. We have about 800 women in the group now, and it's a really supportive environment. The community manager, Keisha, does not tolerate any foolishness, judgment, or shaming. Thankfully, we haven't had that pop up, but I can tell you if we did, then those members would not be allowed to stay in the group. I also don't tolerate judgment or shaming as well. So really a supportive community. It's all about pregnancy and birth. You can find that on Facebook, and I'll link that up in the show notes as well. All right, so that's it for this episode of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. I would also love it if you leave a review in Apple Podcast. It helps other women find the show. Of course, I love to hear what you think about the show, and it helps the show to grow. I also do shout outs on episodes of folks who leave me a review. So please do that if you feel like you appreciate what I'm doing here. I would love to hear about it in one of those reviews. Also, don't forget about my free online class on how to make a birth plan that works. Over 1,000 women have gone through the class in just the last month or so and found it very, very helpful with that updated information, giving birth during our COVID-19 times. You can register for the class at ncrcoaching.com/register. It's an on-demand class offered several times a day, so do check that out. Now, next week on the podcast, I have Alice Turner. Alice is a doula and childbirth educator, and her work focuses specifically on getting partners ready for their role as a support person. So this will be a really informative episode. So do come on back next week for that. And until then, I wish you a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. Head to my website, ncrcoaching.com, to get even more great info, including free downloadable resources on how to manage pain in labor and warning signs to look out for after birth. You'll also find information on my free online class on how to make a birth plan, as well as everything you need to know about the birth preparation course. Again, that's ncrcoaching.com, and I will see you next week.